Coming up next, we talked to one of the most underappreciated singers of the 1980s, and he had a few years of bad luck in the industry until he was in the right place at the right time, and he got a career-defining opportunity, he and the other member of his group, when one of the biggest movies of 1990 used their song in the opening credits, and the song became a smash. This heart-stopping singer tells us the story of one of the greatest movie songs ever, and how the title came from a random comment at a bar. It's coming up next on Professor of Rock, brought to you by Zenni. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever been so blown away by a song that you heard in a movie that you immediately went and bought the soundtrack, you're going to dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below and click the little box there so that you always get our latest interviews. We have some amazing ones coming. I remember that so many times I'd see a great movie and I'd go right out and buy the soundtrack. So make sure to check out our Patreon. The link is below. We've got a new series starting there and you're going to really like it. So it's time for another episode of our series Revelations, my favorite. This is where artists and bands give us unique insight into their greatest songs and their greatest albums. And today, we have a rare sit-down with one of the most underappreciated singers of the 80s and 90s, Mr. Peter Cox from the band Go West. Now, Go West had several hits in the 80s, and then they hit a patch of bad luck with no label support and a changing of the guard at the top of the food chain, if you will. They were able to do some writing with the number one hit songwriter Martin Page, who we just interviewed a few weeks ago. He was coming off of several number one hits with his hero Elton John's co-writer Bernie Taupin. Amongst other successes, he worked with a bevy of people. The duo of Go West consisted of Peter Cox and Richard Drummie, and combined with Martin Page, they created the hit Faithful. That went to number 14 in 1992. And of course, their signature song, King of Wishful Thinking. That hit number 8 in 1990 off the Pretty Woman soundtrack. The way that this song came about and how they were able to get in on the blockbuster film in 1990, which was really a Cinderella story itself, it just seems too good to be true. But yes, it is true. And up next, Peter Cox gives us the upfront and personal story. Now, as we go into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. I love these guys. They're the glasses I wear every day. It's really eyewear for every budget. If you need or want a new pair of glasses or shades, look no further. Zenni has got you covered. Now, go to Zenni.com, Zenni, and you make the call. You design your own frame. You know, the size, the shape, the color, and you can try them on before you buy with Zenni's virtual try-on feature. Check it out today. Here's Peter Cox with the story of King of Wishful Thinking. One of my favorite songs of all time, King of Wishful Thinking. Just, what a phenomenal song. And speaking about how you were talking about the 80s tours and things, I don't think that promoters understand how big that song is in terms of Generation X, my generation, men and women. Like, everybody loved that song. It was just, to me, one of the greatest songs of the 90s. And number 8 on the Hot 100, though, I think it was much bigger than his chart position as far as it goes. And number 7 on the AC charts, number 18 in the UK, number 3 in Canada, and number 6 in Australia. And a song that you and Richard wrote with, as we've talked about, prolific songwriter Martin Page, and who's become a friend. And he told me a little bit about that. How did you guys connect?
Well, we after the difficult second album, a new A&R department arrived in the UK, and I should have mentioned by now Ron Fair. I don't know if that name is familiar to you, but he's head of a label, I'm sure, by now. I should know that, really. But, he's signed the Black Eyed Peas, Christina Aguilera, any number of hugely successful artists. And it was through Ron that we initially got our deal with Chrysalis. And once the second album had obviously underperformed, to say the very least, bless him, Ron was effectively, he wasn't fired, but he was demoted so far that he really had no option but to leave and move on to another label, which he did. So we had a standoff with the A&R department in the UK. I chose this moment, much to everyone's dismay, to tell the A&R guy what I thought about the records that he had been involved in up until then, which he didn't take kindly to, unsurprisingly, and basically said, I have the checkbook, and until you do what I say, there won't be any more money. So we went home and sat there for months. Finally, in an attempt to get things moving, I can't remember the actual chronological order of events, but Richard was sent, whereas up until this point, Go West had been a writing collaboration between Richard and myself. That clearly wasn't delivering the goods. So Richard was sent to New York to work on the writers' circuit there, and I was sent to California, which suits me because I like California.
Yeah.
And I had 10 or 11 collaborations. I'm sure this kind of thing goes on now, but that was the way of things. If you were an artist and you didn't have any songs, they would put you together with a number of people who had a track record. And so I came out to California and I worked with a number of people. The collaborations were more or less successful. And then one day I showed up at Martin Page's house, and Martin was the one writer that I worked with on that trip that seemed to have put some thought into where we were coming from as a band. And so the first thing he presented me with sounded to me like something that we might have written, which was great. So that was a song called That's What Love Can Do. We finished that song. I think it was the only song of all those collaborations where I actually came back with a finished song. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was strong. The label obviously thought it was strong. They included it on the album. And somewhere in that process, Ron, now at EMI America, realizing that he hadn't heard anything from us for some time, called and said, where's the next Go West album, guys? What's going on? So we told him our tale of woe. And again, in 6 weeks, we were off Chrysalis, signed to EMI America, and we were in California. Ron was just amazing at making things happen. I mean, if I can just take you back for a moment, just to illustrate that fact, when he signed us to Chrysalis originally, he was a junior A&R man, and I don't necessarily think that he had the power to sign artists at that point. And he said to Chrysalis, if you don't let me sign this band, I'm going to walk. So he put his own career on the line to get us a record deal. And here, years later, hopefully it wasn't as risky for him the second time, but he salvaged us from a difficult situation. And that's how, and I said to Richard, I work with this guy, Martin Page. He's a Brit. He's out in LA. He really understands what we're about. You've got to meet him. We should write with this guy. So that's how the collaboration came about in the first place. Yeah.
He had told me that he wanted, with that song, particular song, King of Wishful Thinking, that he wanted to have a little bit of an edge for America, you guys to have a little bit of an edge. He said, I thought that they would accept a little bit of funky soul from him, is how he said it.
Yeah.
And he said that when he was writing the music part for King of Wishful Thinking, that he was trying to come at it with like a Prince Minneapolis sound meets Motown. And that he had heard Fine Young Cannibals at the time.
Yeah,
She Drives Me Crazy was number one and massive. And that he wanted kind of that tempo, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that big backbeat, that crazy snare sound from that record. Yeah, definitely.
I read that you really wanted to give them a hit. You really wanted to work to give them something incredible. And that's really a modern day Motown song.
Oh, you just nailed it. I feel that too.
Yeah.
It's a Smokey Robinson song in a way.
Yeah.
It could have been a Motown. I really feel, I said it to a few friends, I said King of Wishful Thinking could stand the test of time as a really good Motown, Smokey Robinson kind of song, because it's got that blue lyric, but where it really takes you straight away into a great groove.
We were, again, at the aforementioned Le Parc Hotel, where we spent many, many weeks in our attempt to break into the American market. And we were in the bar, unsurprisingly, with Robert Palmer's band, oddly enough. Donnie Wynn, I think, was the live drummer at that time. Robert himself wasn't there, but we were having a drink in the bar and discussing where we were. And Richard said, yeah, we'll be fine with the Kings of Wishful Thinking. And I just thought, that'd be a good song title. And so when we got together with Martin, I put that forward as the title. So Richard thought of it, but it was my idea, kind of. So then we just, the thing that amongst other things that Martin brought to the table, the thing that I think Martin brought was focus. He's a really focused, hard-working guy, whereas we haven't always been quite that disciplined. And I remember, even though he's moved now, in that converted garage studio where we worked, he had a sign on the wall and it just said, "Don't give up." And I think he brought that into the work in collaboration. This is a guy who's listening to the work he did the previous day when he's cleaning his teeth in the morning. I mean, he is a very focused guy. So where Richard and I might be drawn to the pool on occasion, Martin would be in there, slaving away, putting overdubs down and so on. It worked really well, I think, the three of us together.
Phenomenal title. I mean, King of Wishful Thinking, come on, it doesn't get better than that. So I think it was great that you caught that, because there are things that are said in everyday conversation and sometimes we let it pass. But if we can kind of grab that like you did and say, "What? Okay, that's a pretty good title," write that down.
Yeah.
Tell me about writing it. What inspired the lyrics? Because the singer, you're in denial as singing the song, kind of like the song a few years before, "Missing You" by John Waite. Has that same kind of feel of, I ain't missing you at all. I ain't missing you at all. And you're in denial through the whole song, but it's bouncy. It's just like this bouncy, happy song, right? But dramatic, and it's kind of disguised like this, again, and that's what makes it so gut-wrenching, is that the further you get into the song, the more that mask kind of comes off, and it's just a flawless vocal performance. But tell me about writing it. What inspired it?
Thanks, man. Thanks. You're very kind. It was just, again, brainstorming in the room. But I do remember singing, "I'll get over you." And then Richard straight in with the background vocals. So that has made performing that song quite challenging, because in the studio, I sang the whole melody line, including Richard's BB. And of course, I suppose in that moment of time, when I sang that phrase, I thought there'd be a pause after that where I'd be able to take a lungful of air. And then Richard comes in with the BB. So now the melody line is more continuous in the chorus. But in terms of the meaning, if you want, of the lyric, as I say, I think we just were brainstorming together. I've said before, one of the more difficult things about writing in a collaboration with someone who isn't willing to let you do the lyric, and by the same token, if Richard's presenting me with a series of chords, I'll say, well, but couldn't we just do that, and so on and so on. And Richard's input is the same with the lyrics. So when it's working, as hopefully it did with the King of Wishful Thinking, that's great. On another day, when you're not as in sync with one another, you end up with something that, like some of the songs on the first album, where, I kid myself maybe that I can look at the songs on the first record, look at the lyrics, and I think I know which lines came from me and which lines came from Richard. But, if I say, as I would, look, I'm the singer, it's got to sound right coming out of my mouth. Richard might not necessarily agree with that point of view. But anyway, I'm not really answering your question any more than to say brainstorming in the room. I think Martin was quite, in a collaboration, I think he's savvy in that he understands that the lyric has to sound right coming out of the singer's mouth. It's got to sound genuine. It's got to sound honest. And so while he might say, that's cool, he wouldn't necessarily be trying to force any ideas, certainly on me as a singer. That's not how he works. He understands how to get from A to B and have everybody happy with the end result. Yeah.
If you'll allow me, I want to ask you about some specific lyrics and vocal parts, because this is a song that really needs to be broken down, because it's just, again, it's, I'm listening to it last night. I've heard the song over 1,000 times. I mean, especially the first couple of years it came out. I bought the Pretty Woman soundtrack, and it was my favorite song. And of course, Roxette had a great song from that.
It must have been love, but it's over now.
Peter Cetera did. But it's just one of those soundtracks where all the songs were great.
On record, yeah.
But King of Wishful Thinking was my favorite. Even last night listening to it, like hair raising those parts. And when you're going through something like that, a heartbreak or something like that, it's like the perfect song, because you're trying to keep your pride intact and trying to tell yourself it'll be okay. That's what's so great about the song and why people loved it so much, because it spoke to their exact, what we've all gone through.
Well, certainly, you know, as a writer on any level, as a songwriter, I think you're aiming for a universally identifiable theme. So if we got that right, then that's really cool. Yeah.
Well, so the first part where it says, "I don't need to fall at your feet just because you cut me to the bone." I mean, just a great lyric. "I don't miss the way that you kissed me. We were never carved in stone."
We were never carved in stone.
Just poetry.
Oh, man, thanks very much.
What do you
Appreciate
remember
that.
about those lines? Just kind of come
Yeah,
out?
you're my idea.
Yes. I love it.
I don't remember specifically. But, you know, the thing is, again, as I say, about being the singer, I would argue that the more it's coming from the singer, the more, in my own case, the more I can sing a song with conviction. You know, I kind of think that's what it's about. If you're not singing a thing with conviction, then the listener is less likely to believe, you know. So.
Well, and if I don't listen to the talk of the town, then maybe I can fool myself. And the part where you go into the chorus, because I'm the king of wishful thinking, I love how you come in and repeat the line. You do the little ooh part right there. That just felt like it was you in the moment. Is that what it kind of was in the recording studio? Because some things just aren't planned.
You mean immediately after the end of the chorus?
The first chorus.
When the title is repeated?
Yeah, when you say king of wishful thinking, you say, ooh, and then repeat it. I think that just shows so much vulnerability.
I'm not sure that it was so much of a conscious effort to create that feeling in the listener, but I can remember that arrangement-wise, those extra 2 bars there where the title is repeated, I do remember that was Martin's idea. Because, you know, as you say, Martin's got a track record, and clearly he thought, we need to make sure that people have the title. Let's just give it to them one more time, as it were.
I am the king of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then I refuse to give in to my blues. That's not how it's going to be. That harmony, I love how you go into the harmony parts in that second verse, because it builds the song.
That's not how it's gonna be.
Yeah, well, going back to Gary Stevenson producing the first Go West album, that mantra of, okay, we had verse 1. How is verse 2 going to be different from verse 1? What's going to happen? We need an event. We need a keyboard part. We need a harmony, so on and so on. So, yeah, I would say that was songwriting craft in a way. Yeah, just to add that harmony there.
Well, and it's just the little nuances, vocal nuances, like when you say, because I don't want to let you see the no, that whole part. That you have made a hole in my heart. I mean, it's just, man, it's gut-wrenching.
Thanks, man.
Those nuances were just great.
Thank you.
Those little inflections, like the falsetto part that you go into, and then there's the sax part. You kind of come back in because there's that break, and then I'll never shed a tear for you. Again, these are things that just take the song from a 10 to an 11. these little nuances.
Thanks, man. I mean, I would definitely say that in the songwriting process, hopefully you've got your verse lyric, your chorus lyric, you've got the melody. It's almost that one of the trickiest parts as the singer is when you get to the outro and you're singing that first outro chorus, and then everyone's going, okay, we've heard that. Now what are you going to do? And then you kind of in front of the microphone in the studio, and you have to make something happen. And that, I would say, isn't necessarily something that I would work out. I didn't work out those parts in The King of Wishful Thinking because I remember being in the studio and we had been working on that song. We recorded it twice before. We recorded it with Wendy and Lisa producing. And so clearly the label felt that the song was strong because they kept on making recording funds available to go back in the studio to get the song right. And we were working with Peter Wolf, the Austrian producer, and we were in someone's house in the valley. I should know the artist's name. And we were using their in-house studio. And I'm in front of the mic trying to do the lead vocal and clearly not delivering what Peter Wolf wanted to hear. He wasn't hearing the angst or the particular feeling, maybe the one that you're talking about. So we're going over it. And I think there's an element of desperation, not necessarily coming from an emotional standpoint, but just like I got to come up with something good here, and what you hear is what you got. So I'm glad that you thought it was good.
Absolutely. Well, and then that last pre-chorus when the music goes a little bit quiet and then you sing, I'll get over you, I'll pretend my ship's not sinking. That just brings it all together at the end there.
I'll pretend my ship's not sinking.
That's brilliant. It's one of those, like I said, hair-raising experiences as a listener. And then when on the end where you just go off, I'll pretend that my heart's still beating. And that's where, and again, I know that it wasn't so planned, but that's where the mask totally comes off and it's like, all right, I really am struggling here. This is a massive heartbreak. And that's what's great about the song is because it holds that pride. And then it just, as the song goes along, you kind of fall apart at the end.
You made a hole in my heart.
Well, again, thank you. Maybe I should give Peter Wolf more credit as if obviously he produced the track. We did a whole album with Peter, but maybe there's subtlety in production going on there while I'm in the studio in front of the microphone and Pete's going, come on, we need more. And I remember, because my voice cracks a little bit, it's not perfect in that particular breakdown that you mentioned there. And again, I've already explained, I'm thinking, I need to really come up with something. And I tried to do a thing and something happened, obviously, but maybe it wasn't exactly what I would have dreamt would happen. And when the tape stopped rolling, I can hear Peter Wolf saying, yes, that's the shit. So he was pleased.
I love that. Well, you mentioned that the little part where your voice cracks, and I really feel like that's what's missing from modern music because people have perfected things so much where you've got auto-tune and they want it to sound so perfect. We're missing that. When the voice cracks, those little imperfections are what makes these records from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s great, and the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's human, and we're human.
And another way of looking at that, by the way, is if you're a Motown fan, as I am, and you grew up with that music, those vocal performances, I'm sure you'll have seen the solo live TV vocal when Marvin Gaye sings Heard It Through the Grapevine. That is a flawless vocal. That is just so good. And all of those recordings by all of those artists, because I've been through a slightly less technologically advanced era of recording than we have today. But of course, in those days, live was live, man. I was in Hitsville in Detroit, and I'm told that tape recorder had 3 tracks. So there's a big, I don't know if you've been to Hitsville, but there's a big photograph on the wall of Stevie Wonder recording, and the whole band is in the room. The horns, the background vocals, everyone is in there. That, whatever you hear on that record happened in that 3.5 minutes. And that's what always blows me away about how good those vocal performances were. And if you fast forward to today, where often I think a certain generation of people who are listening to contemporary pop music are accustomed to hearing a perfect auto-tuned vocal. And it makes you wonder what the concert experience must be like. How do they do that? I don't know how they replicate that live vocal if they're not miming, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that they are, but how do you make that happen live? I couldn't even imagine how that would be.
Absolutely. I'm a huge Motown fan, and that's probably why I love King of Wishful Thinking so much, because I feel like it feels like a modern day Motown song.
Well, I mean, I think, that's hugely flattering. And, I think Martin and I think you could say Richard's tastes are slightly more left field, I would say. But in terms of the King of Wishful Thinking, I hope you'll forgive me if I just tell you a little story about that song, because not that long ago, I did a little my top 5 for a small TV channel here called Vintage TV, and they were filming a number of these in the day, and there were artists going in and coming out and so on. And the guy who was in the studio immediately before me was Andy Fraser, the bass player from Free. Remember, I was saying earlier how they were my initial inspiration. I want to try and do this. And Andy Fraser was Paul Rodgers' songwriting partner in that era of the band.
Sure.
And I followed, and I couldn't believe it. Oh my God, Andy Fraser's in there. I'm going to meet Andy Fraser. Definitely one of my all-time heroes. And he had chosen The King of Wishful Thinking as one of his top 5 songs. How about that? Talk about, things coming around. I just, anyway, that was you can imagine for me, that was such a great day. How amazing. And I said, because of course I was being a fanboy and I was just going on with Andy Fraser. I was just trying to explain to him what those albums had meant to me in my 17, 18, 19 years. And he said, oh man, no, you got your own thing going on. And I was, well, because largely, well, partly at least, that came from him. So that was really cool.
Pretty Woman, a lot of people don't realize that King of Wishful Thinking wasn't written for the movie. It was written before that. And tell us how that came about, because I know that it had something to do with EMI having the soundtrack and everything, but tell us about the process of getting them coming to you and having that on the soundtrack and the movie.
When Ron Fair salvaged us from disaster, we found ourselves in America writing songs for what would become our Indian Summer album. We got together with Martin straight away. We wrote The King of Wishful Thinking. And again, it's the difference in our personalities, because Richard was like, well, that's a hit. And I said, do you think so? Because I don't know. I don't think there are any guarantees. I'm always a little bit less sure. But Richard was like, nah, that is a stone cold hit single. Played it to the label. They agreed, obviously. And a Touchstone, I think, is the film company that made Pretty Woman. And they had obviously contacted EMI America saying, look, we're looking for a soundtrack for this movie. It can be, I'm sure there's a technical term, a catalog album of songs by all the artists you have on the label at the time. Natalie Cole, Roxette, and so on and so on. And so because EMI America obviously thought The King of Wishful Thinking was a hit, they said, well, we need to put this on the record. So it was really a question of, as I've said many times, being in the right place at the right time. I think that a lot of that happens in the music industry, things that you don't plan for. And then we just got lucky, basically, because they said, you guys need to go out on the road and do a radio station tour. And Richard said, no, we're just starting what we haven't done anything for 18 months. We're finally in the process of writing songs for our next album. We don't want to take a break. And they said, no, well, you have to go and do it. So that's one of the reasons why the Indian Summer album took even longer, was because we went out on a radio promo tour and we were on the road for 7, 8 weeks, as I remember. It was a long, long time. And it was hard. I found that hard work. I know you'll be familiar with the concept that when you're doing those things, you arrive in the city on a late flight, you're on drive time radio at 6:30 in the morning, you spend the day meeting local dealers and whatever, you get on a plane in the evening to the next city, and the same thing happens again. And it's hard work. But we finally had a top 10 single in the US. So when you said that it was number 8, but it was bigger than that, we were so happy to be number 8. We were so happy to finally have an American hit after years and years of trying.
Your single and Roxette, It Must Have Been Love, 2 big hits that drove that to being a huge soundtrack for 1990. Sold 3 or 4 million copies in the U.S. alone. And you guys were nominated for a 1991 Brit Award for Best British Video. And did you see the film when it came out?
I saw, the first time I saw any of it, again, these are technical details that I'm not fully up to speed with. But in the cinema, they break the audio up so that the vocal's in the middle and the track is either front and back, or anyway, 5 to 1 or something. I don't know what it is. But we were invited to go up into town to watch the way they had put the song into the film. And I missed all the good parts about it because, as we've already discussed, sometimes you're the end title theme and no one's paying attention. Sometimes your song comes out of a robot like it did in Rocky IV for like 11 seconds, and that's that. And here we are at the beginning of the film. There's no dialogue when Richard Gere drives down the hills in his borrowed car. There's no dialogue. You get to hear the whole verse and the whole chorus of the song, which in my experience, that's the only time that's ever happened to us, where you actually got an opportunity to tune in. It's right at the beginning of the film. Everyone's paying attention. You get to hear the verse and the chorus. But because of the way they alter the audio, my voice was early against the music. I was absolutely furious. It's like you spend 25 years perfecting how to sing at a certain place in the bar, and when you've been very complimentary about how the vocal is syncopated and so on, and that's all part, hopefully an unconscious part by that point, of how you do what you do. And it sounded to me like they'd moved me, like a couple of frames earlier or something. I was so angry about it.
If I don't listen to the talk of the town.
But anyway, it all turned out in the wash, I guess.
Yeah, it just was parodied recently. Jimmy Fallon and Paul Rudd recreated the shot-for-shot video. Yeah. What did you think of that?
Well, it was just, my manager called me and he was very, very excited. I think he thought that, in the next few days we were going to be flying out to be on Jimmy Fallon's show. And we were going, John, just take it easy. That's not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, as I said, because my manager's like, well, you've got to tweet Jimmy Fallon straight away, say something funny, get him engaged, And I said, John, this is enough. It's amazing what they've done. And clearly it was made with love, which is exactly what I said when I reached out to say, thanks to everybody concerned, because, they went to such a lot of trouble to make it perfect. And as I've said many times since, the funny thing is that we shot that video in a day and they had 2 days to do it. So, goodness knows how much money they spent recreating that, but they did a great job. It was, and it's obviously very flattering. And when you see how many views their remake has had, that's not doing us any harm either. So it's all
no, for sure.
Yeah.
So was there any interaction at all with them? Did they call anybody around to find out how to do this shot or this?
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Wow, they
just did it.
They recreated it very well.
They sure did. Yeah.
Well, the song has also been used in Family Guy.
Okay, time for some recent history. This is the 1990s.
And Halt and Catch Fire, so it's been in TV shows. And I think it's one of those songs for sure that, just like We Close Our Eyes, is where you can play that song and it immediately takes the listener to that moment in their life.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, people say that in general about coming to see the band play live. I mean, we always have prided ourselves in having the best players around us that we can, because again, it's that control thing. It's, well, it's got to be like this, and the chord progression's got to be this, and please don't play that because that wasn't on the record, and so on. And we've been lucky enough to always have great bands, and people come and they say, man, sounds just like the record, which it doesn't, but it's close enough. We do the best we can, and it's close enough that if you can, it's my opinion that when you're playing people's songs, you hope that if they're coming to hear that record that they love, that they will be in the moment and think, wow, it's, that's the song I was doing this at that time. And you can imagine lots of people have said very nice things about Goodbye Girl, which we won't repeat in the context of this interview. But, they associate those songs with hopefully a good time and a good memory. So I'm glad that it has that effect.
Hey, leave us a comment about this all-time movie soundtrack fixture. This song is such an incredible song. What are your memories of this spectacular song? I remember I was heartbroken over a girl. I listen to this song all the time. What's your story? Tell us below. If you like our videos, make sure that you subscribe below and hit the bell. That way you never miss out on our new interviews. We're a daily channel again, so there's always going to be something good coming your way. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.